In 1983, the Houston Rockets finished with a 14-68 record and acquired the #1 pick in the NBA draft, which they used to draft Ralph Sampson. In the 1984 season, after reaching the All-Star break 20-26, the Rockets began benching key players, making losing substitutions and going 9-27 for the rest of the season, securing the worst record in the Western Conference for the second year running and winning the first pick of the NBA draft once again, this time selecting Hakeem. So in an attempt to reintroduce competitiveness while simultaneously commercializing a growing league, new NBA Commissioner David Stern introduced a televised draft lottery, which gave all non-playoff teams a chance at the #1 pick, rather than just the worst team in each conference. But was this a system that brought parity and fairness, or one that simply allowed the NBA to have more and more control over the commercial value of its league? In 1985, Patrick Ewing was dubbed by Sports Illustrated as the NCAA's most recognized athlete of all time. Simultaneously, New York was the most lucrative market in the US, and yet the Knicks were struggling to find success on and off the court. This was not good for the NBA, a league which was in the midst of a battle to overcome poor TV ratings, empty arenas, racial tension, and a reported cocaine epidemic. In fact, 6 of the 23 teams in the league were on the brink of extinction. So what was David Stern's solution? Bring college basketball's biggest superstar to pro basketball's biggest market. Prior to the 85 draft lottery, the New York Times stated that there is a strong feeling among officials and advertising executives that the NBA will benefit greatly if Ewing ends up in a Knicks uniform. Atlanta Hawks GM Stan Kasten claimed that a high-ranking NBA official told him, "Ewing is going to the Knicks. Ewing is going to the Knicks. It's all set up." So, at the lottery, the Knicks envelope was intentionally hit against the edge of the drum, which caused a visible crease to appear. Stern kept a close eye on the envelope as he went on to reveal that the New York Knicks would receive the #1 pick in the 1985 draft, and the rest is history. Whilst in 1985, every lottery team had an equal chance of acquiring the top pick, by 1992, the odds had changed, as the team with the worst record had a 16.7% chance. The second team had a 15.2% chance, and the trend continued all the way down to the 11th worst team having a 1.5% chance of obtaining the #1 pick, with Minnesota and Orlando as the 2 worst teams that year. David Stern had an interesting conversation with projected #1 pick Shaquille O'Neal prior to the draft lottery.
I met him before the draft. He says, even before the lottery, he said, "You want to play where it's hot or where it's cold?" And I said, "Hot." Then Orlando gets the ball. I don't think none of it.
I'm a conspiracy theorist.
Yeah, I am too. So then I'm in.
I love that you just said that.
I'm at the draft, and he's coming up with the envelope, and he's looking at the envelope, and he goes.
Shaq lifted the Magic to a 41-41 record in his rookie season, an identical record to the Indiana Pacers, who finished as the 8th seed in the playoffs due to a superior head-to-head record over the Magic. It was therefore a shock to everyone when the Magic ended up with the #1 draft pick, once again, despite having only a 1.52% chance of doing so. The Magic used this pick to trade for Penny Hardaway, who teamed up with Shaq to lead the franchise to its first ever NBA Finals, just 6 years after its formation, leading skeptics to think that this was a way to boost the value of the league's new franchise. In 2003, Ohio native LeBron James was the most hyped high school prospect in history and was drafted #1 by his hometown team, the Cleveland Cavaliers, something LeBron himself was skeptical of.
Listen, man, during the ball drop, during the lottery drop, Cleveland got the #1 pick. I just don't think that was.
Whoa, what are you
coincidence,
saying? Don't you see?
Chicago native Derrick Rose was the projected #1 pick in the 2008 NBA draft. The Chicago Bulls won the draft lottery despite having a 1.7% chance of doing so and only the 9th worst record in the league. Rose went on to become the league's youngest ever MVP, and if it wasn't for injuries, who knows where he could have taken the franchise. Victor Wembanyama, the Mad dubbed as the greatest prospect in the history of team sports, grew up a fan of the San Antonio Spurs as his nation's greatest player, Tony Parker, spent almost his entire career with the franchise. Given that the Spurs had managed the careers of former number 1 picks and fellow big men David Robinson and Tim Duncan perfectly, many speculated that the NBA chose San Antonio as a destination for Wemby, knowing that he would develop well and fulfill his dreams of playing for the franchise. So does the NBA really decide the fate of its most precious assets, or is this just an example of sports fans becoming conspiracy theorists the moment something doesn't go as expected? After all, not only is Shaq notorious for fabricated stories, but some could argue that it would be too difficult to tank perfectly by having a 41-41 record and missing out on the playoffs via head-to-head. And whilst LeBron's claims that his destiny of becoming a Cleveland Cavalier was suspicious, it is not too hard to believe that this was a genuine outcome, as the Cavs did finish with the worst record in the NBA, and thus had the highest odds of obtaining the number 1 pick. The same can be said for the 2023 San Antonio Spurs, who also had the joint best odds with the second worst record in the NBA. It remains up in the air as to whether or not these theories are legitimate or not, but the 2025 Draft Lottery has put NBA fans in a position that makes it extremely difficult not to believe that there is some form of collusion going on, as we have now seen the culmination of a series of events that spanned 14 years and are all linked to this man. On December 8th, 2011, the New Orleans Hornets agreed a trade with the Los Angeles Lakers that would send their franchise player, Chris Paul, to LA. Commissioner David Stern vetoed the trade as he claimed that the Hornets would be better off keeping Paul. 4 days later, they agreed a trade with the Lakers' crosstown rivals, the Clippers, which the NBA again blocked as they had additional demands to the original terms of the trade. Finally, on December 14th, the Hornets and the Clippers agreed on a deal to send CP3 to LA. Now you may be wondering why and how the NBA had so much influence and control over this transaction. A year prior, the NBA bought the Hornets from its previous owner, who was no longer in a financial position to own the team. The NBA was struggling to find a buyer for the Hornets, and some believe that they promised the incoming owner the number 1 draft pick of the 2012 draft, highly likely to be Anthony Davis, who was an Olympic gold medalist before even setting foot on an NBA court. Davis was spotted wearing a Hornets hat before the draft lottery had even taken place. And in a surprise to no one, the New Orleans Hornets found a buyer, received the number 1 pick, and selected Anthony Davis in a move that definitely left them better off, just as Stern had promised them 5 months earlier. By 2019, Anthony Davis had developed into one of the best two-way players in the game and had requested a trade from the franchise, now known as the New Orleans Pelicans, on multiple occasions, as they were not helping him fulfill his ambitions of becoming a champion. The Pelicans refused to trade him before the deadline and refused to play him until the NBA threatened them with fines. A few months later, the Pelicans would receive the number 1 pick again in the NBA draft. A player who was considered at the time to be a once-in-a-lifetime athlete, Zion Williamson. This was despite only having a 6% chance of ending up with the number 1 pick. Unsurprisingly, the Pelicans' reluctance to trade Davis subsided as they sent him to the Lakers that same summer. After winning a championship with LA in his first season, Davis went on to establish himself as one of the NBA's elite players of the 2020s. This is why sports fans around the world were shocked in 2025 as they saw that he had been traded to the Dallas Mavericks for Luka Doncic. As good as AD is, this was seen as one of the worst trades in NBA history by the Mavericks, who traded a man who at the age of 25 had just led them to the NBA Finals and already had a Hall of Fame resume. With a 32-year-old injury-prone Davis getting injured in his first game with Dallas, Mavericks GM Nico Harrison was under unprecedented fire for his decision to trade Luka. Many speculated at the time that this was a decision enforced by the league in an attempt to give its biggest market a star for the next 10 years in the wake of LeBron James's impending departure from the sport. But there was one piece of the puzzle missing in this theory. What was in it for Dallas? They went from Western Conference champions to missing the playoffs in less than a year. their entire fan base turned on the franchise, leading to empty seats and season ticket holders demanding refunds. Some pointed to Harrison's ties with Nike, while others speculated that the franchise would relocate to Vegas. But on May 12, 2025, the answer was made very clear to everyone, as the Dallas Mavericks, who had a 1.8% chance of winning the draft lottery after losing the play-in tournament and failing to make the playoffs, were gifted with the number 1 pick of the 2025 NBA draft and were gifted the chance to draft the league's next superstar, Cooper Flagg, which is leading to many NBA players, media, and fans to severely question the integrity of the league.
There's video evidence of my teammates basically saying we're not putting all our faith in an 18-year-old kid.
I don't think you can really just bring a high school player in and really just think your team gonna really turn around like that. You know what I'm saying? He can just hop on our bandwagon.
Gets it to LeBron for 3 for the win. Yes!